Welcome to another episode of the Creative Flair Podcast. Today we're going to be exploring the life and work of Caravaggio. I had a fantastic opportunity this morning to do a small presentation for the Last Caravaggio exhibition that's going on at the National Gallery in London, and I decided that doing a small episode about Caravaggio's life would be a really interesting thing to do. So today we delve into the life of Michelangelo Merisi da Caravaggio, an artist whose work not only revolutionized the Baroque era, but also brought a new level of emotional truth to painting. Caravaggio arguably has one of the most interesting artistic stories of any artist from this period. His work is revolutionary, and his story is very interesting indeed. Not only was his work rebellious, but Caravaggio was a rebellious human himself. But we'll get into all of that a little bit later. Caravaggio's story begins in Milan in 1571. In a world ravaged by plague and political strife, his family was hit hard by the plague, losing almost every member by the time he was just 11 years old. These early experiences with death and survival left a permanent mark on a young Caravaggio, and would later deeply influence his art. As a teenager, Caravaggio apprenticed under Simone Pietrasano, who himself had studied under Titian, one of the greatest painters of the Venetian school. Though his early works remain largely unknown, his training would have provided him with the foundational skills he later relied on to produce his dramatic scenes. By the 1590s, Caravaggio made his way to Rome, the heart of the artistic Renaissance. Rome, however, was not just a city of art, but also of stark contrasts, opulence and poverty. It was the perfect backdrop for a young artist eager to make his mark. Caravaggio's early years in Rome were tough. He struggled with poverty, taking any work he could find, which often included painting decorative scenes for wealthier artists' workshops. His fortunes began to change when he started creating works for Cardinal Francesco Maria del Monte, a keen art patron. The Cardinal's support was pivotal, providing Caravaggio with both financial stability and access to influential circles. It was during this period that Caravaggio developed his signature style, rejecting the idolized interpretations of religious and mythological subjects that dominated the era. He opted instead for realism and dramatic lighting. His models were people he encountered in the streets of Rome: merchants, beggars, and prostitutes. This approach not only humanized biblical and classical figures, but also injected a raw, almost visceral power into his paintings. Take, for example, his painting, The Calling of St. Matthew. Instead of a grandiose heavenly scene, Caravaggio presents a very ordinary moment in a dimly lit tavern. Christ's hand reaches out, barely noticeable in the shadowy room, to call Matthew. It's this blending of the divine and the mundane, lit by a stark beam of light from an unseen source, that exemplifies Caravaggio's groundbreaking approach. But Caravaggio's life was anything but mundane. Known for his fiery temper and penchant for brawling, he often found himself in trouble with the law. His most notorious altercation occurred in 1606, resulting in the death of a young man during a violent street fight, a crime for which Caravaggio was condemned to death. This marked the beginning of his life on the run, a fugitive from justice. Despite being a fugitive, Caravaggio continued to work, and his art never really suffered. He traveled to Naples, Malta, and Sicily, each time establishing himself anew, still securing commissions and producing some of his most profound works. His paintings from this period, like The Beheading of St. John the Baptist, are marked as an even greater intensity, reflecting perhaps his own turmoil and awareness of mortality. As we approach the final years and chapter of Caravaggio's story, we find an artist whose life had become as dramatic as the scenes he painted. After fleeing Rome as a wanted man, Caravaggio's life entered a period marked by fleeting stays and continued artistic production under the shadow of his past crimes. In 1607, Caravaggio arrived in Naples, a city vibrant with artistic potential and less significant law enforcement than Rome. Here, he was welcomed by the Colonna family, part of his extended network of patrons who provided him some protection. In Naples, Caravaggio painted some of his most poignant works, including the Flagellation of Christ, a piece that is visceral in its depiction of pain and suffering. The stark lighting intensifies the drama, highlighting Christ's physical torment and the twisted expressions of his tormentors. Caravaggio's reputation, both his genius and his notoriety, preceded him, and in 1608, despite his precarious state as a fugitive, he was made a Knight of Malta, a prestigious position that offered him such further protection. It was during his time in Malta that he completed the beheading of St. John the Baptist, his largest and perhaps most moving work. This painting, unique to his oeuvre for containing his signature within the blood flowing from John's neck, is a stark, powerful image full of darkness and foreboding, reflecting perhaps his own state of mind. However, Caravaggio's violent temper did not subside. Within a year, he was imprisoned in Malta after another altercation. He made a daring escape to Sicily, however. Over the next year, he moved 3 times, each time creating magnificent works, like the Burial of St. Lucy and the Raising of Lazarus. These paintings continue to show his hallmark use of light and shadow, a technique known as chiaroscuro, something that he was most pivotally famous for. But there's a plausible sense of urgency and raw energy to all of these works, a possible reflection of his desperate circumstances. In 1610, perhaps sensing the end was near, Caravaggio took a boat north with the hope of receiving a papal pardon from his powerful Roman connections. It's during this journey back to Rome that the final mystery of Caravaggio's life unfolds. He disembarked at Porto Ercole, a small town on the coast of Tuscany. And here, in the summer of 1610, Caravaggio died under mysterious circumstances at the age of only 38. Some say he died of a fever. Others suggest he was assassinated by enemies he made along his journey. What's undeniably tragic is that Caravaggio died not knowing that his pardon had indeed been granted. His body was never recovered, and he was buried in an unmarked grave. His death as enigmatic as his life, yet in his final words, we see an artist who, despite or perhaps because of his personal demons, was able to portray human vulnerability and divine beauty with unparalleled intensity. The last years of Caravaggio's life were a testament to his enduring artistic spirit, his relentless pursuit of emotional truth in his work, and his profound impact on the art world. His legacy is one of brilliance and darkness, a mirror to his own life, reminding us that from great turmoil can come transcendent beauty. Thank you for joining me as we explored the life of Caravaggio, something a little bit different that I've been experimenting around a little bit more with. I try not to make these episodes too long, but if you would like a more in-depth episode about the full feature length of Caravaggio's life, please don't hesitate to let me know. Also, please feel free to send me a message via Instagram at creativeflair_org, and I'd be happy to answer any questions, or let me know if you wanted a longer podcast episode about Caravaggio or any other artists that you'd like me to explore, or I can just stick with these sort of smaller length episodes. Thank you all very much for joining me on this little journey, and I hope to see you again next time.